Welcome to the debut of Fit to Speak from the archives. I'm Eugene Obah, glad as ever to be with you. Today and across the next 12 weeks, we'll be revisiting episodes of Fit to Speak that we did in 2020, plus two of the shows that we did in 2021. Upon the launch of Fit to Speak on July 30th, 2020, the premise was simple: to have quality, fact-based discussions in good faith about topical issues in news, media, and culture that people care about with those who are indeed fit to speak on the subject matter that we present. And I believe that we've delivered at a time in which such conversation is, in some cases, a lost art form. As mentioned in the June edition of Fit to Speak, the original show will return on November 23rd. Of course, you can catch up with all of the shows that we have done in the first half of the year, as well as all of the shows that we did in 2021, right here on this YouTube channel, youtube.com/CSE channel. Be sure to subscribe and ring the bell, and also consider joining us on Substack and Patreon, csemedia.substack.com and patreon.com/Common Sense Entertainment, where you can support all of the work that we do here. You get a lot of nice little bonus material and get to have a few little perks along the way. But to start off this series, I can think of no better way to begin than with our debut edition, in which my team of BNC and OAN, Brittany Johnson, and Rahim Dawodu Jr. talked about what we were going to do with the show as part of the new news division that we created during what ended up being one of the many heights of the continuing novel coronavirus pandemic. Who knows when this pandemic will finally become endemic, but one thing's for sure: Fit to Speak from the archives is just getting started. Hello and welcome to our new panel discussion series, Fit to Speak. I'm Eugene Obah, so glad to have you with us. Over the past several months and amid the novel coronavirus pandemic, many businesses, including ours, have had to adapt to a new normal, a changing environment, as it were. And over the past several years, we have been proud to present documentaries and web series, and most recently, our short on independent artist and activist Radio Rahim. Radio Rahim Renaissance Man has traveled all over the country and won in Germany for Best Short Film. So with that kind of success, we had to ask ourselves, how do we continue to build on that kind of success? And do we really need to chart a new course? Earlier, I had a conversation with the Common Sense Entertainment team. It was quite lively. Have a look. And joining me now is BNC and OAN, the president and co-founder of Common Sense Entertainment, Brittany Johnson, the executive producer of Common Sense Entertainment, and Rahim Dawodu Jr., the creative director of Common Sense Entertainment. Guys, welcome. Nice to have you with me. And let's go ahead and get started here. BNC, well, I'm going to start with you. So you and I, we created Common Sense Entertainment back in 2011 as a way to have a platform for us to create our own content and to fully own the content that we have. And before this pandemic, even before the novel coronavirus, you made it known to our team that we had to kind of pivot a little bit. So besides telling us what is new, what is coming for Common Sense, take us through you. Let's learn a little bit about yourself, the credentials that you bring to the table, and what things are looking like going forward.
Well, thank you, Eugene. I think in terms of my credentials, I definitely bring the business side of things. I mean, I do have the traditional media experience. I've spent over 10 years as a strategic communicator, whether as a journalist or working in radio or digital media. So there's that side of things. I also have experience as a manager, working as a radio producer for um, Voice of America and WPFW shows and things of that nature. So I have a little bit of management experience as well as like creative storytelling experience.
What's going to be the new thing in terms of journalism, in terms of media that we're trying to do here? And talk to us about the separation between Common Sense and what this new project entails.
Well, for starters, we're not completely ditching common sense entertainment and some of the work that we've done in the past. We're still very much committed to marginalized people and amplifying the voices of marginalized people. And also, we're still very much committed to DC voices as well. When it comes to CSA Media, it's really a new division. It's a new brand altogether. And with that, our challenge was how do we meet the accuracy and expediency demands of the current consumer while also making sure that that type of content is accessible to the current consumer. And that's something that, even with, common sense entertainment, that's something that we were trying to figure out. But it just so happened that we're kind of in a media environment where news journalism is at an all-time low, and the lack of trust is really apparent in the news industry. And so, for us, it was more so, okay, understanding this new normal and understanding, our own capabilities, our own values, and aligning, our interests and our, desire to kind of participate and, kind of be problem solvers when it comes to, restoring the dignity of mainstream media, and also recognizing what our strengths are. We're great storytellers, and, our values are our journalistic values. We believe in, seeking the truth. We believe in, telling the story in an accurate way, and we believe in prioritizing the facts and not editorializing the content. So, so in part, it's the CSA Media is a continuation, but it's also a way we can actually be relevant to the current consumer.
Brittany, let's continue this on this kind of sort of thread here. So, you and I have one thing in common. We both graduated from the Philip Merrill College of Journalism. You in the master's program, me in the undergraduate program. In fact, all of us are Merrill alums. That's the one thread that all of us have here. So, my question to you, Brittany, is tell us about the experience that you had in the Philip Merrill College of Journalism and kind of weave it with the new project that we're doing here and your experiences with us at this point, since you've been with us here from the beginning.
So, when working with the College of Journalism, specifically with their master's certificate in multimedia journalism, this is kind of like a taste of the journalism community and seeing how journalism can be expanded into the future. So the focus was a lot on getting folks who may have had little to no experience with any type of journalistic pieces to get a broader focus on the actual hands-on steps on how to shoot video or how to cut audio, but also kind of a holistic look as well, looking at journalism entrepreneurship in the new age, looking at website and online design for so that you could be a little bit more independent, and also looking at multimedia journalism and kind of the online stakes of it. So like if you were going to a rally or a protest, how do you put yourself, how do you market the pieces that you're doing, and how do you get it to as many eyeballs as possible? So this program had kind of like a 4-step process just to get you ready for what they deem to be future-proof journalism. And I know that's kind of a scary word, but what we're doing here in CSC Media, I think, is trying to go towards a future-proof journalism stance. And it's not just being prepared for the next decade, it's not being prepared for the next 2 decades. It's being on top of trends and making sure that when new innovations come out, and also generations before and after us switch to a new social media platform, switch to another way to digitally consume content, we're on top of that. And that's kind of what the big takeaway is for the program. With a lot of the new media aspects that's coming in, especially around some of the things that have been happening in the country with the pandemic and also with the protests against racial inequality, having something in your pocket that gives you that advantage that says, hey, I know how to handle this if I'm on the street and I need to get this piece out to social media immediately, or I need to catch this interview because this is the perfect time to do so. This program trains you to do that. And your program at the undergraduate level trains you to do that as well. And so I think the biggest kind of benefit of doing this program is to kind of have that tight experience. You don't need to go get a full master's degree, but you get enough information so that you can be digitally savvy and prepared for the challenges that are coming up in the future. And I think that's exactly what CSC Media is going for and striving for, is to be prepared in a new digital frontier and being able to stay on top of our game without losing our artistic and also our journalistic integrity.
Raheem, Brittany picked up on some very interesting points here, and especially on the local side of it. And I want to get to you. You're also, as I've said with everybody here, as a mayor of the lob, okay, and is around this area, the Washington D.C. metropolitan area, and you have worked on so many influential campaigns, and have worked with us as creative director. Tell us more about what you bring to the table, the kind of experiences that you've had in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, and what all of that kind of means for you going forward in this new project.
Well, thanks for asking me. Yeah, there's so much because I'm from the area. I grew up here, and we're locally focused. So like all of us really, but just speaking for myself, like I know people in the community. I talk to people in the community. I've listened to people in the community. I speak the language and so forth. I remember something in the autobiography of Malcolm X where he mentioned he was talking to somebody else from out of town, and uh, a guy from Harlem came to talk to him about something that's going on in the community, and it was spoken in the language of like a Harlemite in the 1960s or 50s, whatever year it was, and and the person from out of town was like, I don't really understand what he said, and Malcolm X explained to him exactly what he said in a concise way, and he was like, yeah, just how they speak around here, so you just got to like kind of fit in and stuff. And I think having that ability to be able to speak locally and listen locally and know what people are saying and then kind of looking deeper. And I think we all had that as well, but knowing that and be able to like share that's going to be really really crucial to covering these stories locally and getting trust locally and getting people to say, all right, we believe in what they're going to do with our stories. They're not going to exploit us. Far too often, these even like from like the Washington Post or our local broadcasters, they come in seeking to kind of exploit people's stories and not really give them the three-dimensional view that they deserve. And we're not going to do that. We're going to come at them and say like this is a full person. There's a lot to them. They're saying this, and it touches on these things. And I think that's like going to be really really critical for what we're trying to do as an organization with this division. And then touching on a little bit of what Brittany was mentioning, you know, the biggest thing we're going to do as well. Um, a lot of like these entities, again, the bigger ones, they see things from a higher lens, and they come in and they don't really give the full dimension of stuff, or they'll just take a sound bite and not know what to do with a sound bite except for it's just a sound bite and that's it. I think what we're going to do is listen to that sound bite and see what the story is, and then kind of like come in and cover it fully. Along with that, a lot of people are just saying stuff on social media. A lot of just noises in the air. I think our job is to find what's legit in that noise and craft something around it. There's a lot of great stories out there that's just being shared right now, and they need someone to come in and take that noise and craft something that's worthwhile, that's fully formed. And I think that's going to be our biggest role, and I see myself really really helping steer that going forward.
It's going to be something, and I want to continue with Babinti here. I know Brittany touched on a lot of this, but as the overall leadership of the company, what do you think that we are going to bring here that really the legacy outlets cannot?
Well, I mean, part of it is we're bringing a sense of commitment to the traditional values of journalism, facts only, being nonpartisan, investigating thoroughly, doing our research, getting it right, and if we get it wrong, making sure that we make amends. But I think also our competitive advantage is that we're agile, we're flexible, we really are leveraging the digital media space to be able to get our message out and to distribute it as well. And I think also something that the other mainstream media outlets don't have is that we have a certain intimacy, a certain um, ability to be able to have an intimate relationship with our audience. And that's something that, a lot of the mainstream outlets aren't going to be able to do, because we really are going to be, in the streets. We're going to really be talking to people and making sure that people and their voices are heard.
Okay, so Brittany, before I get to the next question, I want to play a soundbite from a panel that we hosted at the University of Maryland in 2013. And we did this panel with the backdrop of talking about citizen journalism. Is Edward Snowden, is Julian Assange, are bloggers, and the news streamers, that sort of thing, are they journalists? We asked that question to Marcus Dowling, and let's take a look at what he had to say.
Anybody can be a journalist, because I feel like I'm also a socialist. So you'll learn this about me as we go through this whole thing. I'm very much a socialist. And I believe that we've kind of leveled the playing field insofar as people being able to report information. But there's a level of quality that's ultimately at importance right now. And that's where the crux of most of this conversation is going to be. It's in how do you stand apart in your ability to do what you do with a level of quality that puts you above the average person that tweets, I ate a Reuben sandwich today. Or, or people that, or citizen journalists, or those kind of journalistic avenues. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's about quality, it's about accuracy, and it's about being able to tell a story in a cogent and intriguing manner.
So was he correct? Was he correct? And will that be an advantage for us?
I think when Marcus brought up the idea of citizen journalism, and specifically about that, the everyday person using Twitter or social media might be just talking about their daily lives, but there takes a special kind of connection to tie in what you're doing with your social media platform and spreading awareness, spreading news. I think that's an important distinction to make. I think he's right in that to be a citizen journalism, a citizen who does journalism versus just a person who blogs the news or retweets the news. You kind of have to have an awareness, a context of what you're sharing and what you're repeating or what you're trying to share out. So a lot of the noise or filter or chatter we hear on some of these social media sites are people with an opinion, but not with the context of that opinion. So they're putting out hot takes, they're putting out, ideas and opinions, but they're not actually putting a contextual surface to that information. So again, I bring up the protests because it is relevant to our day and age in 2020. But there are a lot of people who might have an opinion about what's going on with the protests, both from many sides of the divide, but it's only those people who kind of tie it into certain contextual, either historical, political, socialism, or kind of like this idea of there's just something more going on than just these people are angry because of X, Y, and Z, or these people shouldn't be doing this because of X, Y, and Z. And I think that's what at the heart of what Marcus was talking about, is getting that idea into frame that it's not just about what you're sharing or what you're delivering to the news. It's about putting it in a context that the average person, the lay person can understand and connect to. And I think that's what we do a great job at here at CSC Media, because we're not just saying this is DC or this is just something that we have information on. We're giving you the background, the history, kind of the cultural aspect, the socio-political aspect of it as well. And I think that means a lot, especially if you're going to be on these social media sites, just posting information that you're getting that anywhere that anyone else can get and just share it just as easy as you do.
Has the barrier to entry in terms of entering journalism gotten low, because now we have a lot of these citizen journalists? Is that a thing?
I think it is a thing, and I don't think it's necessarily bad. I think, again, anyone can be an athlete, right? Anyone can play co-ed sports. Anyone can be an athlete in their high school or collegiate years and may not be at the pro level. So the definition of athlete, I'm using this for kind of a metaphor, can be anyone who completes a sport. So in journalism, anyone, again, who receives news, who passes that news on, and in my opinion, who shares that news with the contextual background that's needed for a populace at large to understand it, can be a journalist, a journalist, or complete or work in the idea of journalism. However, just because you can doesn't mean you're going to be the greatest at it, nor are you going to be able to reach people if you're not being authentic to yourself. So if I reported on X, Y, and Z news, but it's not in my understanding or my context to be able to post that news and be able to explain it to the populace at large, then yeah, I'm a journalist, but am I really making an impact? Am I really making a difference? Am I really making a connection so that people who may not understand what's going on can get that information? So I think everyone can have journalism integrity. I think everyone can share and post news, but it only takes a certain amount of people who will be able to tie that news together so that the communities that they're serving can understand and gain more information from that knowledge than just reading the news article or reading the news piece by itself.
Okay, folks, so I really want to talk about some of the things in terms of the linear television ratings because television is still a big thing, and especially for the cable news networks. The average age of the typical viewer of cable news is over 60. And in the case of Fox News, nearly 100% of their audience are white. And we're seeing some interesting stuff too in terms of podcasting. The streaming is going up, cord cutting is going up, especially among millennials and Gen Z. Spotify has also observed a lot of interesting trends. Now, Dawn Ostrov, she said that people are listening rather to the podcast later in the day, and there's some opportunities there for family consumption. And as we well know, Spotify, they licensed recently Joe Rogan's podcast to the tune of $100 million. Now, folks, we have no clue when this pandemic is going to end. Okay, I think that the way that things are going, especially in certain states, I think it's going to be 2022 before we get back to any real sense of normalcy. And Raheem, I want to throw this question to you as our creative director. Um, as we know, once things start to change, and once people start to form their habits in terms of engaging, or just in general, really, they tend to stick.
Mhm.
So, as our creative director, tell us what are you going to do about some of these things? Like, I just think that we're in an era where the only thing that's constant is change. So, what are you going to do about some of these trends here, and how are we going to get people to make sure that they're engaging with our content?
We have to create content that's interesting, that's relevant to what uh, our audience is. I think what Mincy mentioned earlier about us being agile because we're smaller, that's going to be critical. You mentioned TV ratings and how like that's still a very popular form of like a source for some people, but those entities are older, and they're whiter. And for us, we're targeting a younger audience. They're not going to be all white. They're going to be very diverse. And because of us being a smaller entity, we're able to kind of tell their stories in the proper way. And I think the biggest thing is that because we're smaller, because we're able to adapt and adjust to the current times, we're going to be able to reach these people through just creating content for them. That's like, to me, the biggest thing is like video, and video of people seeing themselves on video, seeing people that look like them on video. I want us to capture more stories from people that are actually at the ground level, talking, being activists, doing work, covering their communities, telling the stories of their communities, what's happening in their communities, and how things need to change. And that's the biggest thing I want us to do. A bigger entity can't do that because the bigger entity is it's like a turning a Titanic ship. It's hard. It's going to take time for them to maneuver. Whereas I think we're going to be able to do that quicker and in a more quicker fashion because we're smaller and we're more to the ground, and we're going to be closer to the community, by and large. I think the most exciting thing is just like kind of like giving people the opportunity to tell their stories for the first time. You know, I want us to like really hone in on that, and let people tell their stories themselves. We obviously like guide it and shape the narrative form so that's actually like clear and within our standards. But we want them to tell their stories. We want to listen to them. We want you to speak on it. We want to show you as a fully formed person instead of like an exploitive quote that doesn't say anything about you as a person. We want to actually say like, this is what's happening. This is what I do. This is what I do every day. This is my family. These are the stories that this is what's happening in my life, and this thing is impacting me in this way. I want us to harp on that more than anything, and going with with what you mentioned as well about habits. Because we're targeting a younger audience and a more diverse audience, they're setting their habits right now. When younger millennials and Gen Z are of an older age, that's what the industry is going to look like. The way that we all consume news now is what's going to be the standard in however many years that is. Just like cable news became the standard for baby boomers and younger and older generation Xers. That's what we're getting the ground level right now to do, is to start creating content for those habits that are going to be there for the next 20 some odd years, 30 years, or however long it is. And so that's really important for us to get there at the ground level right now and to do that. But we can do that in our way of making sure that people sharing their stories and making sure that they're sharing their stories, but in a real full four-dimensional way. And I think that's the biggest thing that I want us to do we can do it now, really, but especially once this pandemic's over. So that's my hope.
Okay, but Betsy, the last question is going to go to you today. So, for our viewers, any of our new folks that are following us, why should they care? Why should they care about following this project?
Well, look, we're not idealists, okay? We understand what we're up against. We understand that we're definitely going to be, punching above our weight. But we're committed to bring the type of news reporting that you deserve. We're committed to making sure that you are empowered as a consumer. We promise that we're not going to editorialize the content. That's not our job. We're committed to being nonpartisan. As a founder and president, I vow that we'll never be the mouthpiece for any party or any ideology. I mean, that's never going to be us. Also, part of this, one part of the reason why people should care, and why I think people will maybe identify with what we're trying to do, is that we're going to be open and transparent. I mean, you'll be able to see the reports, you'll be able to converse with the reporters. You're not going to be talking to a robot on Twitter. I mean, you see our faces, for example. You see the management, the brain trust. Sunglasses aside, you kind of have an idea of who we are, and that's going to be super important in terms of creating the trust and creating the creative credibility. And we're definitely trying to make sure that beyond all of that, that we do a good job. We are definitely committed to being thorough with our research, as I mentioned before. Well researched, facts based reporting without the fluff. That's something that we're going to spend a lot of time and a lot of resources in making sure that we deliver in that respect. Not just deliver, let me say over deliver. And you're probably thinking to yourselves, that's a lot of promises. But, as one of my favorite mentors says, everything worthwhile is uphill. And we get this, and we're definitely committed, and we're ready for the challenge.
But Betsy, I think you're right. I think that the openness and transparency at a time in which a lot of outlets have forgotten what it means, and especially when we think back to the Walter Cronkites of the world, the Edward R. Murrows of the world, even the Howard K. Smiths of the world. I read his papers during my time at Maryland, and this was example of what real journalism was like, and we're not seeing a lot of that anymore. I think certainly I think independent outlets have been doing a lot of good stuff. I think even foreign outlets are doing a lot of good stuff. But the U.S. media has, by and large, I think hasn't done a good job, and I think that needs to change. And I think it begins with us. And we're going to keep things going. And this program is going to be the first in the series of discussions that we're going to be doing, virtual discussions, that is, until this pandemic is over, whatever that decides to end. And we're no stranger to doing panels. I mean, we hosted panels at the University of Maryland in Knight Hall. Those were some of the best panels that have ever really been done. And we're going to keep going with this stuff because there are a lot of hot topics that are really going on, and you need to stay tuned for this, okay? So, Mabinti Yola, Raheem Delwood Jr., Brittany Johnson, thank you all so much for joining me today. In the follow-up to a story we covered on the March and April editions of the regular Fit to Speak, in which Black News Channel shut its doors, some good news. Allen Media Group CEO and media mogul Byron Allen has bought BNC to the tune of $11 million. The sale to Allen was approved by the U.S. Bankruptcy Court in Tallahassee, Florida. Allen said in the statement, quote, "We're excited to have been selected to acquire the Black News Channel, which has approximately 300 million linear and digital subscribers. Allen Media Group will deliver a best-in-class network to serve the underserved African-American community and the advertisers who want to reach this extremely valuable audience. Also, we appreciate the opportunity to provide cable operators, satellite companies, telcos, and digital platforms diversity of ownership, voices, and viewpoints on their programming lineups by having a 100% African-American-owned network." That last part of the statement is notable given that Jacksonville Jaguars owner Shaq Khan was previously the majority investor. On the April edition of Fit to Speak, I spoke exclusively with Kenny D. Williams, who was an associate producer for BNC when it originally shut down, and certainly an interview worth revisiting right here on this YouTube channel. One network that has overstayed its welcome is One American News, as Verizon in a couple of days will show them the door. Given the lawsuits that OAN are staring down at or have stared down at, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, not to mention talent fleeing like rats on a sinking ship, I think it's only a matter of when, not if, One American News goes bye-bye. No word as to whether or not the twice-impeached former U.S. president or Mike Lindell would read the eulogy. At least for Lindell, rest assured he'll have many pillows to cry into. Next week on Fit to Speak from the Archives, we'll revisit the first of a three-part series that we did on cancel culture, a subject that still very much resonates today. And with Metro continuing not to declare their independence from constantly failing, I referenced in that episode Unsung DC Metro and obliquely mentioned foreign media outlets, one of which shut down earlier this year. I'll attempt to tie all of this together next week, and trust me, you do not want to miss this. In the meantime, be sure to follow us on all of our social media accounts, and be sure to check out our Substack and Patreon pages for exclusive content and to support all of the work that we do here. Finally, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell on our YouTube channel so that you do not miss any of our episodes. Until next week, I'm Eugene Obah. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, the best things in life are worth saving.